Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, a weekly show helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. Today, episode 332, Making Sense of the Storms of Life. And now, Experience of the Soul.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host, and I am here today with my handsome producer.
Handsome today. Thanks.
Why
I put
not?
on a nice shirt for you.
Nice shirt and your beard and mustache. I had to just call it. Somebody needed to say that to you, Sean.
Just get it out there. It's just better to have it out there, I think.
Yes.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 332 of the Experience of the Soul podcast. Today, we are talking about making sense of the storms of life. So where we are, as we are recording this, we are just on the other side of Hurricane Milton. So definitely no stranger to storms here in Florida. But what I love about today's episode is we're going to be talking about the storms of life, how to navigate those storms, uncover the lessons that they bring, and find meaning in those things. So looking forward to getting to all of that. But of course, before we do, as always, we want to do a couple of shout outs, starting with a location shout out. We had a good number of downloads recently of the last episode in Bonnie Lake, Washington. So hello, Bonnie Lake.
Hello,
thanks for
Bonnie
joining
Lake.
us.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful country in Bonnie Lake. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I spent some time, I lived in the Northwest for 12 years in Seattle and traveled a lot. I don't think, though, I was ever in Bonnie Lake proper. I lived in Seattle and went to Tacoma. I was in Olympia. I played a bunch of shows in Olympia, Washington, as well as when I was gigging in Seattle. But thank you, friends, for joining us. That meant a lot to me to know a place where I had lived and loved nearby, that you guys were listening. And as Sean said, beautiful country. It looks like you might have a view of Mount Rainier from there as well.
It actually does say, it's you could see Mount Rainier from there.
Yeah.
I guess it's it's an outdoor enthusiast haven, according to what this says, about 16 miles southeast of Tacoma.
Yeah.
Lots of great natural parks and hiking places. And
and all the tidal ponds that are in the ocean there, and the beaches, are so different in those areas, and even the lakes and everything. They're very different than how I grew up in the South. So, so many great waterways and parks and beauty there. So
excellent. Well, thanks, friends in Bonnie Lake. And of course, we encourage you to use that send us a text message feature, no matter where you're listening to us from. You take a look in the show notes. The very first thing you'll see is send us a text message, and you'll be able to communicate directly with us that way. We encourage you to do so. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's get into it. Welcome officially to episode 332 of the Experience of the Soul podcast, Making Sense of the Storms of Life.
This seems like a heavy topic, and it may be, but, I don't stray from the heavy topics because I think spiritually it's so important to be able to talk about a real life. And as much as I love affirmations and as much as I love positivity, I try not to be aggressively positive. And by that, I mean, pretend everything is okay when, everything around me is burning. It's like there are times when life sends us a storm, and I've been talking about it recently in in my morning mastermind. I've got that 7 a.m. mastermind, and so many of us are from Florida that are in that mastermind group, and we were just comparing the, how the storm impacted us. It came, and by storm I should say two storms, right? Because we had Hurricane Helene and then Hurricane Milton. Interestingly, that's my dad's middle name, but Hurricane Milton on. The second storm that was a little more damaging to many of us here in Florida. So it was very intense. And the first storm, that Helene impacted so much of the country that had never been impacted. And I can't remember if I mentioned it on the show or not, but my family was deeply impacted in Hot Springs. I mean, Hot Springs as a town is still not even open for visitors. It was so impacted, and the road 2 hot springs, part of it's washed out, supplies had to be flown in. So, I'm experiencing this both firsthand as a resident of Florida and then kind of secondhand through family and friends. Sean, you probably remember that we've talked a lot about hot springs where I go and visit, usually a couple times a year. And Hot Springs is a town. If you look it up online, we may want to put one of those links. I think I'd sent you one, Sean, one of those links of the storm there. Hold them in prayer, if you will, because this was Asheville, but Hot Springs, Marshall, some of the buildings I was just in, like I was there last December with my son. Some of the buildings we were in that were over 100 years old are just, gone. So, yeah. So, I mean, this has been for me a really intense experience. The man who bought my great grandmother's home, all I know is that he's safe. There's still no service in there. I mean, it's hard to believe in today's terms, how plugged in we all are, that there's an area that's impacted that deeply that they still don't have running water. So as I talk about the storms of life, I know the storms of life can be equally and even more impactful than these big storms I'm talking about. So making sense of the storms of life is the title of today's message. And I just want you to sit with that title for a second. Just think about that. Making sense of the storms of life. Making sense of the storms of life. For me, it helps to be able to make sense of the storms of life. In other words, there are many things that happen in our life's journey that we often call spiritual journey of the evolving soul, but it's life's journey. And there are many things that happen on life's journey that we cannot control. And I love to speak about how we are powerful co-creators, and we are. I mean, this is what's so, I don't know if it's ironic, if it's a dichotomy. Sean, you have to look it up and help me. But it's like, how do we hold both? Yeah, I guess, how do we hold both? It seems like dualistic theology, but how do we hold both with knowing I'm a powerful co-creator on one side, and on the other side, also knowing I don't control what life sends, right? I often jokingly say I'm a co-creator, not a co-controller, because I can't control what life sends me. I don't always know what my soul needs. I don't always know. I don't always know what the storms of life are going to do and what they're going to remove from my life. But usually, if there is a storm in my life, it means something significant needs to be released. It means a time of clarity and focus following that storm. Now, during the storm, it's like trying to find peace, as it's happening is a very important aspect. But like, as we're thinking about the storms that just happened, like we all knew some storm was coming, but you couldn't totally brace for the impact because you didn't know exactly where it was going to hit. And like in Florida, there are jokes all over the internet about how people will throw hurricane parties and such as that. And, these storms, quite frankly, that we've seen recently have been no joke. Anybody throwing a hurricane party is, not in reality at this point, not being safe because these storms have been so serious. So, but to think about that in our own life, like many of us will have health conditions and we just keep on partying as if nothing's happening. I can't tell you the number of people I have seen do this over my life, whether they're family members or members of my churches, where they'll know there's a health challenge or condition. For instance, if you have diabetes and you keep eating a lot of sugar, you're asking for a storm of life. You're not being safe and how you're preparing yourself in your life, in your body, right? So we know storms are going to come. And so, part of preparation just for a storm of life is what? Well, it's doing the spiritual work. It's the things I always talk about. It's prayer. It's meditating. It's taking care of your home and honoring your responsibilities of of taking care of your body and your life. It's like if something keeps coming up for you emotionally, it's got to be dealt with. One of the whole reasons we do this podcast is to help you prepare for what life sends, because life is going to send a storm. No one gets out of this. And, there are a lot of self-help gurus and very well-meaning spiritual teachers who think, well, let's just do some affirmations and nothing bad happens. And friends, that is not only denial, that is what I lovingly call metaphysical malpractice. It is when we pretend that the storms of life don't happen. Right? So first of all, I want to help you normalize if you've had a storm of life. I had a dear friend just went through a very rough breakup, and that's a storm of life. I know someone else who recently lost a child. It was someone whose son was killed by the police. That is a storm of life. A significant storm of life. And these are good people. These are good people. They didn't, quote unquote, ask for this. So storms of life happen. And so I feel like I want you to hear me say, if you've had a storm of life, if there's an issue you can't quite heal, that could be serving as your storm of life. In other words, a storm comes in, it whips in the storms I'm thinking of. I was just talking to a friend in Fort Pierce, Florida, too, who, they had a lot of tornadoes in Fort Pierce, not the hurricane so bad, but tornadoes, people died. People died. Those were literal storms. So our storm of life is going to involve those very same things. It's going to be loss. It's going to be unexpected happenings. That will include our emotions. It could include our physical body. That could bring us also to a crisis of faith. So the first thing I want you to hear me say is, I'm with you. I love you. I support you in this. And because of storm of life might be happening, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're human. And so on this journey we're on, it's like we're trying to figure out, how do I affirm I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual laws? How do I, square that with the fact that things are happening around me? Like, we look at what's happening in the world. We look at how we're personally impacted by these storms of life. And we want to say we're doing it wrong. And I want you to just hear me say, well, let's check that. Let's check that, because sometimes things just happen. But how I want to make sense of it, they don't happen out of nowhere usually, because what's really going on, there is karma is an aspect. There is your desire to heal and to grow. That is an aspect. It is also the will of God that as things move in and through, and you have to release these things, that you rise up and out of these old conditions. Like, let me give you a for instance of one of my storms of life that I still to this day, have some feelings about. But when I was 13 and I had my nephew, who was like my younger brother, passed away, and he had cancer. And his cancer, they felt, was from his dad, whose dad had served in Vietnam and was poisoned by the Agent Orange. And so it's a known fact that many children of the people who, were impacted by Agent Orange were in Vietnam, that their children many times got childhood leukemia. And that's what happened to my nephew. And he was 5 years younger than me. 5 years younger than me. So he was like a younger brother, and it was fun for me to be like an older sister, because in my family, I was the youngest. We even shared a room. So we were super, super close in our relationship and our connection. And, I could not understand why he died. I, I went to his doctor visits, and I don't know if any of you remember. Anyway, in the U.S., even though these ministers were known around the world, they're very popular in the U.S. Oral Roberts, there still is an Oral Roberts University, but Roberts was known for his healing ministry. And looking back, it wasn't really a healing ministry, but that's what they said they were. And so they would go on, we'd watch them on television. They would say, send us money and we'll send you this healing oil. I got the healing oil. I put it on my nephew. And of course I did this without telling anybody. Nobody even knew I was doing all this. His mom is my oldest sister. And of course she knew we were very close, but she didn't know why I was going to the doctor visits sometimes. She didn't know, what was happening, but I was praying with him and I was, doing all this stuff. And I just couldn't believe that God would not answer that prayer. Why would God not answer my prayer? So it was a crisis of faith at a very young age because I didn't understand how somebody so pure would have to die. Like, why would this happen? And as I look back on my life, and I've done this a few times where I actually wrote out different events that happened, significant life-changing events. When my nephew died, when I went and did mission work in Brazil, when my dad died, when I went off to college, big, significant events. They weren't all negative, but they were significant events. And what was interesting is I can't say why my nephew died from a personal reason. I mean, I know that chemicals have reactions or have impacts on the body. And my nephew was frankly a victim of what was done in Vietnam, even though he was born years later. So that from a scientific, biological understanding, the body cannot fight off certain toxins. So from that level, I have an understanding. But from the spiritual level, I don't know why God would do that. I still don't know if I understand it, but I know that my prayers were answered just in a different way than I was hoping, because what I was praying for was his healing. And on the soul level, he probably got his healing when he died, but it wasn't the healing I wanted. And after his death, it put me on my spiritual journey in a different way. I was questioning God. I was asking God. Less than 2 years after that, I was in Brazil doing mission work, bringing people to church through my testimony and through my music. And this was a life-changing experience. I remember that trip as if it was yesterday. So my nephew didn't die so that I could do that, but it was one of the things that helped me make sense of that storm, that there were impacts on his soul that I did not understand and on his journey. I believe now that his journey, his time was done here on planet Earth, and that's why he died. From a spiritual level, I can know that his death was not in vain, that he had lived the life he was meant to live. And even when he was very young, he had this profound spiritual connection. Like on some level, he knew. Even when he passed, he was ready to go. We weren't ready for him to go, but he was ready. So I'm saying all this to say, on the human level at that moment, I was mad at God. I was mad at the doctors. I was mad at cancer. I still am a little mad at cancer, if you want to know the truth. But I can make sense a little bit of what happened because of what I understand about the soul, what I understand about his karmic play and lessons that he was living out. And I know that his soul is fine. His soul is healed. His soul is complete. His soul is with God. And so after his death, I had a choice. I could stay angry at God. I could question God. But instead, I found the lessons. And one of the lessons I found is that through all of life's storms, God never leaves me. People will come and go, but God will never leave me. And so when I prayed, I felt God heard me. When I cried and was mad at God, later that day or the next day, I get an answer. So that storm of life, as hard as it was, and my family still is grieving, his death, and he died 40 years ago. We're still grieving his death because of how precious he was, but there were lessons that arose from that. There were learnings that arose from that, and so the question, for us to ask is, why is this here for me at this time? God, what am I to learn from this? Because if it's happening in your awareness, if it's happening in your life and world, there is a reason it is happening. There is a reason. There is going to be a lesson. And you can pretty much depend on the fact that if there's what feels like a storm in your life, there is going to be a very big release. Sometimes the release is of a relationship. Sometimes the release is of a job or a position. Sometimes it is a release of an old belief about yourself or about someone else. But if there's a storm in your life, the storm is asking you to grow, to change, and to evolve. Because the storms, when they come, and this just happened in Florida, the storm acts like almost like a spring cleaning, so to speak. And it comes in, the storm whips through, and right after the storm, what happened here? We're in a new season. Like the heat has left, and a new season is coming in. It happened seemingly overnight. Suddenly, we're in the 50s this morning, when 2 days ago we were in the 70s, 80s. I think I got in my truck on a day when it was supposed to be cooler, and it still said like 89 degrees. And this morning, it was 58 degrees. Yeah. The storm cleared that out, and there's a new energy here. So as the storm blows through, as the storm is whipping around, we want to hold on to God more than anything. As the storm of life is moving you up and down, as you feel torn this way and that way, hold on to God, hold on to God, hold on to God. And say, God, what is this here for me? As we know in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament, Jacob wrestled with the angel to get that blessing. That's what we want to do. We want to say, I don't want to just suffer through this, God. Help me see what is here for me. Help me see what is here for me. Help me release what needs to be released with ease and grace. Help me heal what needs to be healed so that I may know you more, so that I may glorify God. That's the whole reason the storm is there. So I believe God is in the storm. I believe in our lives, God is in the storm. God is in the storm. I'm not in some Pollyanna thinking, oh, yes, the storms of life are all good and positive. But I'm saying there is a purpose. There is a purpose. We grow when life sends us very difficult situations. And instead of devolving, which is certainly an option, instead of getting mad or railing at God, even though there may be a time for that, we agree to move forward. We agree to learn. We agree to grow and to move forward into this new awareness that God is calling us to. So the question to be asking is, what is the lesson here for me? Not for anybody else, for me. I can only ask about the lesson for me. I don't know the lesson for Sean. I don't know the lessons for my son or my family. I just know the lesson for me. That's all I can do. God, what is this lesson for me with this storm of life? Why is this coming right here, right now? What is this doing here in my life right now? What is this storm here to teach me? And it also gives me a lot of compassion for other people that might be going through their own storm of life. A lot of compassion. Rather than being in a place of anger and frustration, if I see somebody struggling or maybe not acting in their highest interest, I say, you know what? I'm here. I'm here with you. Friends, that's what we're here to do, really. Walk each other home, really. Think about that. The people around you that you know, friends, family that are going through a tough time. Sometimes you're not the one in the storm, but you're seeing the storm. And so asking, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? So this is a very deep idea. The personality and the ego want to get mad, frustrated, and quit and try to walk away. But if a storm of life is happening, it is for your highest growth. It is for your development. It is to bring you into awareness of your soul and your God self. So friends, I'm going to pray with you and for you during this time. And I also wanted you to know I will put a link or two if anybody is interested in supporting some of the relief efforts in Hot Springs, in the Tennessee area. I'll put a couple of links if you're interested in supporting financially. I have supported financially and I will support again. And again, I think in these storms of life, I just always ask myself, what would I want walking through this? I'd want to know somebody cared. I'd want to know somebody was there with me. I would want to know that I'm supported even in my pain, as I walk through this difficult time. So I just ask you to pray on that, to think on that. Is there some way you're being guided to give, to support someone around you that's going through the storm of life, if it's not you right now? And if it's you, please reach out and ask for help. Send us a text message. Join our SoulWorks community. Sean, I know, gives information about that at the beginning and end of the show. There's information on my website, CynthiaAliceAnderson.com. Friends, we want to provide you with support as you handle and navigate the storms of life. Remember, there is a purpose, there is a plan, and your work as a spiritual being is to see that lesson, to glimpse that plan, and move forward with great faith to do that which is yours to do. So, dear friends, I'm with you in this. We honor you. We support you. We bless each of you on the journey, dear friends, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. This podcast is made possible because of listeners and viewers just like you. If you would like to support the podcast with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head on over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Experience of the Soul podcast is copyright 2024 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved, and is produced by Sean Kilgore. A production of the SoulWorks Group, Incorporated. Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience, with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.